What really happened to Team Rocket's Jessie and James? After a quarter century on screen, these lovable villains blasted off into the sunset, but their final fate remained a mystery to most Pokémon fans. The anime left us wondering, did they ever find happiness together after all that romantic tension? Turns out there's an official Pokémon story that reveals exactly what became of our favorite villains, and it's nothing like what you'd expect. In this hidden tale, Jessie and James don't just fall in love, they actually get married and start a family together. The Electric Tale of Pikachu manga holds this shocking truth about where they ended up, and why this incredible revelation stayed hidden from mainstream fans for decades. But most Pokémon fans have no idea this story even exists. This spin-off manga was an unusual official tie-in that experimented with more mature themes than any other Pokémon title at the time. The Electric Tale of Pikachu wasn't just another manga trying to cash in on Pokémon's success. The manga ran for 20 chapters from April 1997 to December 1999, hitting shelves during a completely different era in Japanese media. Content standards were way more relaxed back then. What publishers considered acceptable for Pokémon-related material would shock modern fans. The late 90s were a wild time for manga in general, and Pokémon content wasn't immune to those cultural differences. Here's the thing that makes this manga so unique. The creator Toshihiro Ono came from a very different background than typical Pokémon content creators. Before taking on this project, Ono was primarily known for creating adult-oriented manga. That's not a throwaway detail. His previous work targeted mature audiences, which meant he approached Pokémon characters with a completely different mindset than anyone else working on the franchise. When most people mention Pokémon manga, they're talking about Pokémon Adventures, which follows the games pretty closely and maintains the family-friendly tone you'd expect. The Electric Tale of Pikachu took the opposite approach. While it was specifically based on the anime rather than the games, Ono took massive creative liberties that transformed familiar characters into something entirely different thanks to his adult author background. The tone shift was immediately obvious from the first chapter. Characters behaved in ways that completely contradicted their anime personalities. Ash wasn't just interested in Pokémon battles. His driving motivation in early chapters literally revolved around impressing Gary's sister. That kind of romantic subplot was unthinkable in the anime, but Ono made it central to his version of the character. These weren't subtle changes either. Readers who picked up the manga expecting typical kid-friendly Pokémon adventures got something that challenged their expectations at every turn. The humor was more mature, the character interactions felt more realistic, and the emotional stakes carried actual weight. Many scenes from this manga would never pass content review for modern Pokémon media. Despite running for only 20 chapters, Ono managed to cover storylines spanning the entire Kanto region and Orange Islands arcs. That kind of pacing meant every chapter packed way more character development and plot progression than typical manga adaptations. There wasn't time for filler or repetitive content. Every page had to count. What really set this manga apart wasn't just the mature themes or faster pacing. Ono focused heavily on character relationships that the anime barely acknowledged. Where the anime treated romantic tension as occasional comic relief, the manga explored genuine emotional connections between characters. This approach completely transformed how readers understood familiar faces from the TV show. The manga treated Pokémon battles differently too. Instead of being purely about strategy or friendship, battles carried real emotional consequences. Characters dealt with genuine failure, disappointment, and personal growth in ways the anime never attempted. Victory and defeat actually mattered to these characters' development. This different approach extended to every aspect of the storytelling. Dialogue felt more natural and less exposition-heavy. Character motivations made logical sense rather than serving plot convenience. Even minor characters received depth and personality that made them feel like real people, rather than cartoon archetypes. Most importantly, Ono understood that his adult background gave him permission to explore themes the anime couldn't touch. He wasn't constrained by the same content guidelines that kept anime characters eternally childlike and emotionally static. This freedom allowed him to write character arcs that actually progressed and resolved. The result was Pokémon content that felt grown up without losing the core appeal of the franchise. Characters could be funny without being cartoonish, dramatic without being melodramatic, and romantic without being inappropriate. Ono found that sweet spot between mature storytelling and Pokémon's inherent charm. These tonal shifts set the stage for deeper character development that would completely transform how we understood Team Rocket. Unlike the anime's two-dimensional villains, the manga reveals Jessie and James began as hopeful trainers who only turned to crime after crushing defeats. When they first appeared in Chapter 7, titled Pikachu's Excellent Adventure, you immediately noticed something different about them. They carried themselves with more confidence and spoke like adults who had actually lived through real experiences. These weren't the bumbling cartoon villains from the TV show. They had genuine presence and sophistication that made you take them seriously as characters. The biggest change was learning about their actual backgrounds, revealed through flashbacks in Chapter 19. Both Jessie and James started out exactly like Ash, young, hopeful Pokémon trainers with big dreams of becoming champions. They weren't born criminals or naturally evil people. They were kids who wanted to prove themselves in the Pokémon world, just like every other trainer who started their journey with excitement and determination. What separated them from Ash was what happened when they faced their first real challenges. Both Jessie and James entered Pokémon League battles early in their careers, convinced they were ready to take on the world. Instead, they got completely destroyed. Not just regular losses either, crushing, humiliating defeats that shattered their confidence and made them question everything they thought they knew about Pokémon training. Those losses did something to them that the anime never explored. They didn't just make them sad or disappointed, they fundamentally changed how Jessie and James saw themselves and their place in the Pokémon world. They went from believing they could be champions to feeling like complete failures who didn't deserve success through honest means. This backstory explained so much about their behavior that the anime never bothered to address. When they watched Ash battle gym leaders or participate in tournaments, they weren't just looking for opportunities to steal Pikachu. They were watching someone live out the dreams they once had for themselves. Sometimes you could see genuine concern in their eyes when Ash struggled, because they understood exactly what it felt like to have everything on the line in a Pokémon battle. Their criminal activities weren't random acts of villainy either. Everything they did was driven by this desperate need to prove they weren't complete failures. Stealing powerful Pokémon like Pikachu represented a shortcut to the success that legitimate training had denied them. They weren't evil for the sake of being evil. They were broken people trying to fix their shattered self-worth through the only means they thought they had left. The manga showed them dealing with these feelings together in ways that revealed just how deep their connection really was. When one of them was struggling with self-doubt or depression, the other was always there with support and encouragement. They had developed this partnership built on mutual understanding of shared trauma and genuine care for each other's well-being. This shared experience of failure and disappointment created an emotional bond that went far beyond simple criminal partnership. You never saw them constantly arguing or putting each other down like they did in the anime. Instead, they demonstrated real trust and emotional intimacy. James would notice when Jessie was having a bad day and knew exactly how to cheer her up. Jessie could read James's moods and provide comfort when he needed it most. They functioned like a team in the truest sense, two people who had each other's backs no matter what. This emotional foundation made their relationship feel authentic rather than forced. The romance that would develop between them wasn't just fan speculation or wishful thinking. It was the logical result of two people who had found genuine understanding and partnership in the middle of their darkest period. But it would take one pivotal chapter to transform their dynamic completely. Chapter 17 changed everything for Team Rocket, marking the turning point midway through the 20-chapter arc. This was the moment when Jessie and James stopped functioning as just criminal partners and transformed into something completely different. The setup seemed familiar enough. Ash was preparing for his big battle against Drake in the Orange Islands, and naturally Team Rocket showed up. But instead of launching into their usual Pikachu stealing routine, something unprecedented happened. They offered to help Ash prepare for his battle by providing strategic advice during dinner. Think about that for a second. These two had spent countless chapters trying to steal his Pokémon, and now they were volunteering to assist him in one of the most important battles of his journey. The shift was so dramatic that it caught everyone off guard, including Ash himself. He didn't know how to react to Team Rocket actually wanting to help him succeed instead of sabotaging his efforts. What happened next never occurred in the anime, and probably never could have. Ash did something that showed real maturity and growth as a character. He invited Jessie and James to dinner, not as a trap or some elaborate scheme, but as a genuine gesture of hospitality. He treated them like actual human beings instead of cartoon villains who only existed to cause trouble for him and his friends. The dinner scene revealed sides of Jessie and James that had been building throughout the manga, but finally got their moment to shine. Instead of plotting or scheming, they sat down and had a real conversation with Ash about his upcoming battle. They showed genuine pride in how far he had come as a trainer and offered specific insights about battle tactics and Pokémon management that proved they had been paying attention to his growth as a trainer. During this meal, the manga started including romantic moments between Jessie and James that were subtle but impossible to miss. Their body language around each other had changed completely from earlier chapters. They sat closer together, made more eye contact, and seemed genuinely comfortable in each other's space. The protective behaviors they had always shown for each other became more obvious and intimate. The most telling moment came when James fell asleep with his head resting on Jessie's lap. She didn't push him away or make some joke about it. Instead, she watched over him with obvious affection, gently stroking his hair while he slept. This scene lasted several panels, giving readers time to absorb the tenderness and just how much their relationship had evolved. The trust and intimacy between them felt completely natural and earned. Their transformation became even more apparent during Ash's actual battle with Drake. Jessie and James attended as his supporters, cheering him on and showing real emotional investment in his success. They weren't there to interfere or cause problems. They genuinely wanted to see Ash win. The manga showed them calling Ash Ashy Poo to the audience, which demonstrated their full emotional investment in the match and signaled their complete shift from foes to friends. When Ash started struggling during particularly difficult moments in the battle, you could see genuine worry in their eyes. Their faces displayed real fear that he might lose, and they leaned forward in their seats with tension that couldn't be faked. Jessie even reached out to comfort Misty during tense moments of the battle, putting her hand on Misty's shoulder and offering reassurance. This small gesture proved how much she had grown as a person. Chapter 17 proved that underneath their villainous roles, Jessie and James were capable of real friendship, authentic love, and meaningful personal growth. They had evolved from failed trainers to criminals to something much more valuable. People who could support others and find genuine happiness in relationships built on trust and mutual respect. But readers had no idea just how far their transformation would go. In the final chapter, Chapter 20, the manga flips to a domestic scene that hit readers like a freight train right from the opening page. There was James, gently tending to a visibly pregnant Jessie, with the kind of tender care you'd expect from a devoted husband. No dramatic buildup, no explanation. Just this quiet moment that completely shattered everything readers thought they knew about Team Rocket's future. The contrast with their previous appearances was so stark that many fans had to flip back through earlier chapters to make sure they were reading the same manga. The revelation came in waves as the chapter progressed. Jessie and James were portrayed as husband and wife expecting their first child. This wasn't some implied relationship or fan speculation anymore. The manga showed them as a legitimate married couple building a real family together. Meowth was still with them as their loyal companion, now part of a household that included cribs, baby supplies, and all the mundane details of preparing for parenthood. Their core trio had evolved together into something completely different. Their entire lifestyle had transformed beyond recognition. The criminal scheming was completely gone, replaced by the ordinary concerns of expecting parents. James drove a respectable car that suggested they had found legitimate work and financial stability. These weren't the broke villains constantly scheming for their next meal. They had somehow built a comfortable middle-class life for themselves. The most shocking part wasn't just that they had reformed, but how completely the Pokémon community had accepted their transformation. Ash's mother Delia welcomed them into her home like they were old family friends, even entrusting them with delivering a letter to her son. This woman who had watched them terrorize Ash for years now trusted them enough to handle personal communications between her and her child. The level of forgiveness and acceptance this represented was unprecedented in Pokémon storytelling. The manga hinted that Ash, Misty, and Brock had all been present when James finally confessed his love to Jessie. Not only had they witnessed this pivotal moment, but they had supported the relationship and encouraged it to develop. Their former enemies had become their friends to such an extent that they wanted to see Jessie and James find happiness together. This kind of emotional investment from the main characters in Team Rocket's romantic life was something the anime never even attempted. Their redemption arc had reached its absolute completion. The journey from failed Pokemon trainers to desperate criminals to reformed citizens and loving parents represented the kind of character development that most long-running series never achieve. They had gone through every possible stage of growth and emerged as genuinely good people who had earned their happy ending through real change and personal growth. The final pages showed them as an authentic family unit preparing for their fourth member, James, Jessie, Meowth, and their unborn child. This represented hope and new beginnings in the most literal sense possible. They weren't just starting over as individuals. They were creating new life and building a future that completely contradicted their villainous past. What made this ending so powerful was how earned it felt. The manga had taken time to show their emotional growth, their developing relationship, and their gradual integration into the Pokemon community. Nothing about their transformation felt rushed or undeserved. They had put in the work to become better people, and the story rewarded that effort with genuine happiness and acceptance. This conclusion provided something that decades of episodes never delivered: actual closure for these beloved characters with real stakes, meaningful development, and a satisfying resolution that proved what Pokemon storytelling could accomplish. The Electric Tale of Pikachu delivered what 25 seasons of anime couldn't: a complete 3-stage transformation for Team Rocket that actually made sense. They went from failed trainers to criminal partners to a reformed married couple expecting their first child. Jessie and James got real character development, genuine romance, and a satisfying conclusion that transformed them from joke villains into actual people with purpose and love. This manga proved that even the most unlikely characters can find happiness and redemption when writers treat them with respect instead of just using them for laughs. It's wild to think a 20-chapter manga delivered more closure than 25 seasons of TV. If you've only seen the anime, this ending will blow your mind. Let us know in the comments which moment surprised you most. Who knew these bumbling villains would become the franchise's most unexpected love story?